Can we just talk about that? What is life all about?
History shows us that we live in a caste system. Is equality or freedom really for all? Or are we forever stuck in a caste system?
Okay.
We were kind of talking about it last class.
These are very, very, very difficult questions. What is life about? Caste system, freedom, and equality, and justice.
Okay, let's just focus, because that's kind of just leading up to the last part. Those first.
Freedom doesn't exist. Justice doesn't exist.
Is freedom really for all, or are we forever stuck in a caste system?
Freedom does not exist. Freedom does not exist. It doesn't mean that you don't have a choice. Freedom doesn't exist. It just depends on what sort of forces out there influence you, and then you can kind of choose what gives you more pleasure. In that sense, you're free, but there is no freedom. Oftentimes, you don't really have much of a choice. Equality can't and shouldn't exist. Equality of opportunity, maybe, but no, are you kidding? I'm more intelligent than you, or you may be more intelligent than I am. There's, yeah, whatever. There is also the notion of justice. What is life about? I have no idea. The Bible tried in a few thousand pages. I think it has failed miserably. So did all the other. So has all the other sacred texts and all the other teachers. What is the meaning of your life? Well, if you're single and lonely and pathetic, that's the meaning of your life. Single, lonely, and pathetic. When you have a boyfriend, you fall in love, well, that's the meaning of your life.
You're married, lonely, and pathetic.
I am married, lonely, and pathetic. Fine.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
So, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an. You're moving me more closer to retirement. Now, so yeah, just let some good people define things for you and adopt those definitions.
I won't, but okay.
If you have a sister and she's like 35 and she's married with 2 kids and her relationship is really, really good, and you don't have any of that, let that be your role model. She will define your life really, really well. Find a man like hers who doesn't drink, who doesn't smoke, who doesn't watch porn, who's not aggressive, who's not violent. Find a man like that. Once you do, who has a job, who's good to his parents, once you do, then have children. And once you have children, then you're stuck for the rest of your life, raising your kids, protecting your kids, cooking, cleaning the house, serving your man, going to school and becoming a CEO, having your own life, having your kids' life, having your husband's life. That's a good definition. If on the other hand, you got losers as the icon, then fine. Turn out to be like Nicki Minaj. I just answered it. Anyone else? Yeah, Chandler.
So, about the picture on Moth's quest, I came to the conclusion that it's like kind of like a winding path, and after a while you have to figure out either how to be okay with things or create your own life, since you're a moth searching for life. So I guess my question is because of how things are on the quest, things continually get harder and you become more resistant to things. Do they ever actually ease up, or is it just a couple of months?
In regards to upper climb, you should listen to Miley Cyrus's song, The Climb. It's actually a nice song.
How does it go? Climb.
Just like that.
Climb.
Not quite like that, but yeah, if she sang like that, she'd probably be anyways.
Rocking the rocking ball?
No, that's a wrecking ball. Anyways, now.
Analogy, that wrecking ball song.
So what you have is, for those of you who don't know the story, let me just give a very brief summation and then. So you have a Socrates. That's the king moth. And Socrates has been flying towards the fire. He gets consumed by the fire and somehow survives and comes out. But he comes out not as a man, he comes out as fire. To the point that when someone says, either give us this or we'll take your life, he says, take my life. And when someone says to him, once you die, good morning, once you die, where should we bury you? He says, if you can find Socrates, you can bury him wherever. That Socrates is fire. He's a spirit. And you can't contain spirits. They need no coffins. You can't house them in ground, So what you have is Socrates, and he goes out there and he says, I am the fire, I am the flame. Who wants to come and get to know me? Now, out there in the universe, there are 4 different kinds of people, or 4 different kinds of students. They're all good, They're all good because that's their capacity. They can't go any further. That's not the way they're made. Maybe they have too many responsibilities or obligations in life, parents, family members, all that stuff. So the first moth, or the first student, looks at Socrates. That's all he can do. Just sit back and look at him. And what he sees is a man who's got long hair. What he sees is a man who's not very attractive. What he sees is a man who has some weight on him. He slouches a little. But sometimes when he opens his mouth and talks, he's inspiring. And there comes a point when you kind of listen to him. You forget the way he looks. You forget how unattractive he is. You find yourself in this trance. You just are glued to him. And so this particular person imagines that he has understood Socrates. So what he does, he goes home, locks himself in a room, and writes 25 volumes on the life and teachings of Socrates. And it depends on his eyesight, and it depends on his ears, and it depends on a very, very limited intellectual capacity to understand everything about Socrates. And he writes a book. Now, when you publish a book, your book is going to have some audience. Okay? A lot of people are going to like what you've written about Socrates. And of the 1,000 people who have read your book, they're also going to write their own book commenting on your commentary about Socrates. And then some people are going to say, well, that is a definitive story on Socrates and his teachings. So you have one camp who says Socrates is A, B, C, D. Okay? Then out of the audience sitting looking at Socrates, and perhaps even reading that particular book, they say, yes, Socrates is unattractive, true. When he opens his mouth and talks, he's actually quite inspiring. And something about me just tingles. I don't know what it is. But they have this capacity to say, I want to get closer. I want to understand him more. And remember, when you say, I want to get closer and understand him more, it means that you're not satisfied with the commentaries of the other person. And you're not satisfied with the commentaries in the book. You need to have that dissatisfaction, that you need to hunger and yearn for something more. Okay? Now, your companion before you is completely satisfied and happy with the conclusion he's reached. Unattractive, opens his mouth, inspiring. And then you have the Analects of Confucius, for example. Let me tell you what his teachings are, A, B, C, D. You, on the other hand, you say, no, it all may be true, but I want to kind of understand him a bit better, get to know him a bit better. So you fly closer to him. Now, the problem with getting close to Socrates is that because he is made of fire, because love is alive in him, big questions are rolling in his head constantly. The muses talk to him. When you go there, your body begins to shiver a little. You went there to ask a lot of questions, but all the questions disappear now. You feel a little nervous, and you feel the heat inside you generated by Socrates. And then you go home, and that's all you can do. You don't have the capacity for more. You feel as if you're going to explode, so you go back home. And then you begin to write your own book. Now, your book is also founded on what you have read in this previous book. But now you add a bit more to it, which is if the previous book had 25 chapters, now your book has 35 chapters, because now you talk about the heat, the closeness, the love, the passion, the nervousness, all those things that the first book didn't have. And then people will begin to read your book, and now you have two camps. The first camp doesn't know anything about the heat generated by Socrates. And they believe in this book. That's their faith. This other book has its own unique audience. And this set of people say, oh no, this book is incomplete. Now what you have are two branches looking at Socrates in completely different ways. They begin to fight. Like all religious traditions. Okay? In the absence of the teacher, when Jesus dies, Christianity dies with him. What you now have are just interpretations. When Muhammad dies, the moment he dies, you have two branches. Okay? So what you need to know is this. Those who don't become consumed will always create division. They're divisive human beings. They may be inspiring, but they create division, and they can't unify the system. Okay? Then comes Eugene. He says, you know, I've read the first book, and I've read the second book. I wonder if I can get a bit more closer to Socrates and Chandler. And Eugene gets very, very close. And close in this sense. After having talked to Socrates for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, he goes home, and one morning he looks at his wife and he says, I don't want to be here. He looks at this kid and he says, my child does not stand a chance in the society, and I can't do anything. I don't have the resources. I'm just going to walk away from the whole thing. And what you have is a Eugene who's been burned by the passion, the flame that lives inside Socrates. He understands the pain. He feels the pain. He lives with the pain. And then he has his own book to write. Yes, Socrates from a distance, A, B, C, D. Yes, when you sit close to Socrates, E, F, G, H. But man, just spend a bit more time with him. Instead of 2 weeks, spend 10 weeks. And then you go home and you realize nothing really matters. And then you walk around confused. You walk around anxious. You walk around angry. You walk around angry at God. Angry with Socrates, because they are the ones who destroyed your life. Now you see, and you want to go back and close your eyes, but you can't. You see too much now. Now you've been burnt. And now you write your own book, and some people gravitate towards your interpretation of Socrates, your experience with Socrates. Now you have 3 camps. And what happens with every single evolution, the first book stands there on its own. It's okay. It has its audience. But when the second book comes, people of the second book want to convince the first people who have read the book that there is more to Socrates than what this book suggests. People in the third community, your book, where you have been burnt, you try to convince the second category of people and the first category of people. Now you have 3 different branches who understand Socrates in 3 different ways. And then there is Emerson. Emerson says, this is interesting. So Chandler just saw, Eugene felt. I wonder what happens if you were to be completely consumed. Instead of spending 10 weeks with Socrates, why not just go and live with him? And he does. And now he has the capacity to kind of be the perfect reflection of Socrates. Why, how, who knows? Why does he even have that passion? Because he was discontent with the first book, discontent with the second book, discontent with the third book. You see, so you have people with different capacities. willing to go to further distances to understand more. Okay. And when he comes out, after 5 years of living with Socrates, he comes out as Diogenes. And he's known to be the second Socrates, having gone completely insane. I mean, Socrates was a little sober, but Diogenes, he doesn't care about anyone or anything. Even if you're Alexander the Great, he'll tell you you suck as a human being. And if you crucify him, he says, fine, I never really cared for life. I didn't care for my body. Kill me. It's the best release from life. So, what you have in the fourth person is some guy who has been consumed physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. If you want to believe in the last one, the spiritual part. Now, when that person comes out, he's got fights with the first people, the second people, and third people. Because he's had access to the fire. He's being consumed by the fire completely. And when he comes out, he's not just eyes and ears. He's not just, generates heat. It's a little burn here. Everything about this person has been consumed by the passion and love of Socrates. When he comes out, he's Socrates gone mad. Now, how this fourth person does, how in the sense of expressing what lives inside him or her, I don't really know. Some people become mute. They don't really say about their experiences, share their experience with anyone, because they've come to realize no one really is qualified. Everyone wants to just sit back and watch, or feel the inspiration that generates some heat, or get a little closer so they can go home thinking about this stuff for a few hours and then everything will wash away. He says, no. If I want to talk to someone, they need to be consumed very much like the way I have. Okay. And so the expectation of this fourth moth or fourth student who is consumed completely by Socrates is way up there. The demands are quite hefty, and you don't really have the means to pay through the sacrifices that the demands require you to do. And so what you have again is different people, different capacities, want different things. Can Socrates convince someone who only likes to watch and listen to go further? He can, but it takes too much work. It's not necessary. It's not important. Are we? Last night, UC Berkeley, my aunt sent me this link to this talk they were doing on Palestine. You had Angela Davis, you had Samere, who's a friend of ours. They all teach at UC Berkeley, but not Angela. And so, there's this audience concerned, I suppose, to some extent, because they see things on TV and those images inspire some passion, emotions, most of them negative, and they have empathy and compassion and all that, anger. And you sit back and you listen to all these 4 different people talk. The first one was horrible, by the way. And you say, okay, so all this talk, for what? Who's going to do anything? People are moved by images, very much like the first moth, and they become curious. Is it true that out of 1,000 people in the audience, what could say, I'm going to drop everything and just go to Israel or go to Palestine and do what I can for the people? It's like what happened in, what's that place, Hurricane Katrina? All these people like from, say, California going over there. They build a couple of houses, they come back to their nice little comfortable lives, and you sit back and say, okay, so what are these people talking about? So Angela comes and says, well, we should all be in a state of mourning. All right, okay, so let's all be sad. Fine. And so what? In the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. There are all the disasters happening left and right in Oakland. But once you've been exposed to too many people being homeless, something about it just calcifies. Now you need a different set of images that can kind of bring you to life. Well, let's show you some images from Palestine or Israel. Now, entertainments. Fuck. Yeah.
So the thing you said about when you're like consumed completely and it's like you don't really want to talk to anyone else unless they've been consumed in the same way as you. Like you said something about Sisyphus, and I feel like the connection to the upward climb thing, like if you're on this like journey that's caused by like or like pain or hardship that like has happened to you, and then you start to push the boulder up the hill or whatever, do you only become comfortable in your like independence or solitude by realizing that other people can't really push the boulder in the way that you can? Like they would have to have gone through the same things as you to be like strong enough to do that.
So a few things. When you talk about pain, it depends, first of all, what kind of pain you're talking about. So there is physical pain, which is, I don't have money to pay my rent. Okay? That is a physical thing you need to have. You need physical power. If you don't have the physical power, it will create emotions. It will create anger, fear, anxiety, frustration, and that'll impact your companion. Okay? But all these emotions are caused by not having money. There is also this other kind of pain that is more emotional or psychological, which is, I have the physical stuff, but my father was never there. Or my companion never looks at me or talks to me anymore. That's a psychological pain. Okay? And for physical pain, you don't visit the Bible. For your emotional pain, you don't visit the Bible. Because the Bible isn't there for that. It can pacify you, as Marx would say. It can have a numbing factor that you say, my life sucks because God wants me to learn something about it. Yeah, you're stupid. And you don't need the Bible to tell you that. So you have physical pain, you have emotional pain. Then you have intellectual pain, which is you read a passage in whatever book, and the passage excites you. And you try to understand what this passage or this story is telling you, and you can't. And you lose some sleep, you lose some rest, you have a conversation with your companion about it, and both of you are now perplexed. And then you have this other pain that has to do more with, you're about 40, you've lived a relatively healthy physical, emotional, intellectual life, but for some strange reason, things are no longer as interesting for you as they were before. And something about you is like bubbling, and you don't know what it is. Okay? And for the lack of a better word, I'm just going to use, your soul wants to be seen. I don't know what else to use. Okay? So for those of you who are allergic to such language, get rid of your allergic reaction for a moment. And so you want to kind of figure some things out. Now that's a completely different pain. Now that particular pain, maybe you can find some components in the Bible, but books can't do much for you. They could pacify you, okay, for a little while. So that's the first thing. Now, whatever pain it is that you have, it is like a boulder that you have to push up the hill. It is a struggle to overcome it. And to overcome any pain, you need resources. It's not enough to just push for a minute, depending on the pain and its roots. Some pains, you just need to kind of just push them for like years until you throw them over the hill. So you can kind of walk away saying, thank God that's over. Okay. So it's important to kind of understand and make clear what exactly it is that you're talking about. Now, here's the thing you need to know about the benefits of hanging out with Socrates. If you go to Socrates and say, I love my companion, but she's leaving me. You have a teacher who'll say, well, why don't you go to Barnes & Noble's, check out a book about relationships having gone bad. Divorce. You can go talk to a therapist. And you simply focus on that specific problem. My woman or my man is leaving me. If you go to Socrates, he'll say, what is the nature of love? Love. And he's not talking about just loving your companion. Talking about love, loving your father, loving your mother, loving your sisters, loving your brothers, loving people, loving society, loving justice. And you realize he's connecting you to something so grand that all of a sudden your girlfriend becomes irrelevant. And that's the thing you need. So Socrates is like Costco. He delivers to you things that cover the entire components and elements that live in life. The way you and I deal with life is that there is a tiny part of life we occupy. That tiny little part creates so many dilemmas for us. And we just focus on those narrow things. And so our perspective is narrow. The way we think about things are narrow. I don't know if your question, I don't even know what you asked. I suppose it, yes.
I mean, like when you're like on the journey or whatever, or like, can you only like become properly independent or comfortable with your independence by realizing that other people just can't depend on you?
No. No. I mean, yeah, it depends where you are on the journey. If you're beginning, you need people. You need people who understand you. You need people who can support you, who can comfort you. If your mom just died, you need someone to talk to, man. Okay? Now, if you're talking about someone who has gone through a lot of difficulties in life and experienced a good amount of grief and has processed a good amount of grief, they have a very, very thick skin. They can hold the grief inside them. So there is a loneliness that comes with not having anyone to talk to, but you do want someone out there to look at you, to see the pain that lives inside and say, what's going on? You need that. Then you have another person who has the same amount of grief, if not more, and says, I don't really need to talk to anyone. I can just write it out. I can go for a walk and take care of it. So for the most part, it depends where you are. One of the, again, forgive me for making it this way, one of the best examples, you'll find a couple of scenarios in the life story of Jesus. Whether or not he existed doesn't really matter. Whether or not the stories are true, that itself doesn't really matter. As stories go, it's a beautiful story, because all of life really is nothing but stories, and stories are nothing but interpretations and imagination. Now, you have a guy who's been carrying this cross since he was 12, and now he's like 30-some. For some strange reason, he finds himself in this garden. And at a certain moment, he says, man, this is just way, way, way too much. I gotta carry wisdom. I gotta carry awareness. I gotta be aware of the social situation of my people. I gotta be aware of all the mistakes that people make and the consequences that come with it. I got to deal with the fact that I keep telling people A, B, C, D, but no one really has the capacity to listen. How much can I carry and for how long? And at a certain point, he just breaks and he says, let this cup pass by me. And so there is this moment of loneliness where you're carrying something and you've been carrying it and it's been okay, but all of a sudden you crack and you say, it's too much, I can't do it. So the question that you ask is really, really good. It's just very, very complicated, and it may be because I'm just, a little crazy. But the point is, you have all these different shades of grief, loneliness, independence. Okay? So, Iranian.
So why is it that some people, not all, but like some people, they only consider themselves good at something if they're better than someone else or than a certain individual? Like, for example, let's say you're a good basketball player, right? But there's 3 basketball players, and all of them are good. But one of them is much better than the other ones. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the other 2 basketball players are good. But because the one individual is better than both of them, the other 2 are jealous of the one that's better than them.
Right.
So they attack you.
Right.
to get rid of the competition. Because they can't beat him by skill, but they can beat him by eliminating him from the game. And I've always wondered about that because it's like, why can't you guys just play together and then win bigger tournaments? Why do you have to eliminate? Like, what is, like, I don't understand what the drive, what the jealousy is.
So there are a couple of things. I don't know if you like soccer.
I prefer basketball, but
Yeah, I don't like basketball.
it doesn't matter what sport. But it could be
Look, there is a soccer team. They're called the Real Madrid. And the nice thing, at least used to be, was Real Madrid had this player on their team. His name was Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo is Portuguese. His body is chiseled like Zeus. He's got like 8 abs, 8-pack. His thighs, oh man, his biceps, his cheekbones. And the way he runs, oh, you got to see the way he runs. He's like Sonic. The way he scores, and then what he does after he scores. The moment he left Real Madrid, I lost my interest in watching soccer. When I go home every day after class, the first thing I do, I go to YouTube. And I see if Magnus Carlsen has played chess today. If Magnus Carlsen has not played chess, I don't want to watch it. Now, I don't really know the answer to your question factually, but if I was to approach it creatively, I would say the following. There is something about Cristiano Ronaldo, and there is something about Messi. There is something about Muhammad Ali, and there is something about Tiger Woods. There is something about Stephen Curry and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the way they move, maybe it's the way they speak, maybe it's the way they look, but they grab you. And then once they grab you, it's not like they come out of the TV and grab you, right? You see them and something about them just says, pay me attention, and you do organically. I mean, there are 11 players on the field, and yet you only focus on Cristiano Ronaldo. There are 10 people on the court, and you only focus on Stephen Curry. And you say, well, why? Now, as a team, when you're winning, you all come together. But I have no doubt there are some times that your teammates are moving to the locker room and Curry has all the attention. And as you walk and say, you know, this was a team. I helped him score 50 goals or 50 baskets. Why don't I get an interview? So you have these moments where you're no longer part of the team. The game is over. You're walking by your own lonesome. And you realize, well, one person has a good amount of attention and you get zero attention. And then you become human. You're no longer part of a cult. You know, you've been like expelled. And you say, you know, I want some of that, but you don't get it. But while you're in the team and everybody's like joining hands to conquer another team, no one is jealous. It's not a competition amongst the people on the team. You're just, you know, it's just like a country. Everybody's like working together nicely. Anyways, listen, have a nice weekend. It's good to see all of you. Stay safe. Thank you. Take care.